Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to share with you a story about love, trust, and a mistake that cost $87,000. Just imagine this. You and your partner have been planning to move in together, talking about marriage, talking about building a future side by side. Everything feels certain until suddenly he shows up with a brand new truck. A truck so expensive it costs more than his yearly salary, and he never even told you he was going to buy it. In that moment, all the dreams you had built together start to shake, and the question becomes very clear. Would you still move in with him, or would you walk away? When he first told me that we would finally move in together, my heart was full of anticipation. Because for months we had talked about furniture, about cooking dinner side by side, about making a small space truly ours, and I imagined soft mornings with sunlight spilling across the kitchen table, quiet evenings with laughter drifting between rooms, and a sense of safety that came from knowing we were building something stable, something lasting. That was the picture in my head. A picture painted with warm colors and tender details, until the day he drove up and showed me the truck. It was huge, shining, and almost aggressive in the way it demanded attention, its metal surface reflecting the sun so sharply it hurt my eyes, the leather seats smelling new and overwhelming, and his smile was expectant, proud, almost childlike, as if he had brought home a trophy. But instead of joy, I felt my chest tighten, I felt my hands turn cold, and the sound of his voice explaining every feature of the truck blurred into a distant noise, like static in the background, because all I could think about was the weight of that number, $87,000. It was not just the money, it was the silence before the decision, the conversations we had shared about saving, about planning, about compromise, now reduced to nothing more than empty words. I felt betrayed, not in the dramatic way of someone discovering infidelity, but in the quiet, gnawing way of realizing that the person you love may not see partnership the same way you do. My mind spun with questions. How could he decide something so massive without even asking me? How could he imagine that I would smile and nod, as if this purchase did not tear through every plan we had made? That night, the apartment felt heavier than usual, the air thicker, and the walls seemed to echo with the argument we had just had. He told me it was his money, his choice, his freedom, and his words struck me like cold rain, sharp and dismissive, as though I had no right to feel betrayed. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of cars passing outside, and all the while, my thoughts raced between anger and disappointment, between the memory of his proud face and the crushing realization that we were not aligned. The next morning, the sunlight felt harsh instead of gentle, pouring through the window like an interrogation lamp rather than a promise of warmth. I sat with my coffee, bitter and almost metallic on my tongue, and I thought about the future we had planned, the shared rent, the new beginnings, the promises of stability, and I saw how fragile it all had become in one reckless moment. It was not about refusing to support him. It was about refusing to erase myself, refusing to step into a life where decisions of such weight could be made without me, where my voice could be ignored until it was too late. And so I renewed my lease, a choice that felt both relieving and heartbreaking. because it meant holding on to my independence while letting go of a dream I had carried for 2 years. Yet even now, part of me keeps circling back to the same painful thought. Love can survive arguments, it can survive distance, but can it survive the absence of respect, the absence of partnership? As I sat in my apartment, staring at the unsigned lease on the table, I kept asking myself whether I was overreacting or whether I was finally seeing the truth of who he was. And maybe this is where I want to pause and ask you, what would you have done in my place? If the person you loved, the person you trusted with your future, made a decision that shook the very foundation of your plans, would you forgive or would you stand your ground? Because when I looked at that truck, polished and gleaming under the streetlight, it wasn't just metal and wheels to me, it was a wall built between us. I wondered, can love survive when respect is missing? Can promises hold value when one person chooses pride over partnership? And tell me honestly, if your partner did this, would you still move in with them? Or would you, like me, start to protect yourself before it was too late? I tried to imagine what life would look like if I had said yes, if I had moved in anyway, and the picture was not comforting. I saw late bills stacked on the counter, arguments simmering in every corner, nights filled with silence heavy enough to crush the air between us. And I thought, is this what I want for the rest of my life? To be the one patching holes while he keeps staring new ones into the roof we were supposed to build together. Maybe you think I was too harsh. Maybe you believe that love means compromise, even in the face of foolish mistakes. But tell me, how far should compromise go? Should it mean carrying the weight of a decision I never agreed to? Should it mean sacrificing my own peace of mind just to prove loyalty? I don't know about you, but to me, loyalty is not about blind support. It is about honesty, balance, and respect. So here I am, asking for a break, trying to breathe, trying to listen to my own heart instead of the noise from friends, from opinions, from people who will never live my life. And maybe this is the hardest part, because love makes us want to stay, but self-respect sometimes tells us to leave. And I wonder, which one would you choose? Would you follow your heart, or would you protect your future? The argument we had last weekend still echoes in my mind. His voice sharp, my words trembling, both of us standing on opposite sides of a line we once promised never to cross. He said I was abandoning him, that I was proving I could not be loyal, and for a moment I almost believed his words. But then I remembered, loyalty is not silence. Loyalty is not pretending everything is fine when it is not. Loyalty is standing together, and he chose to stand alone when he made that decision without me. And here is where the story reaches its breaking point. Because love can bend, but how much can it bend before it finally breaks? I told him I needed space, that I needed time, and the look on his face was not anger anymore. It was fear. Fear of losing me. Fear of facing the cost of his choice. Fear of realizing that pride does not pay the bills and shiny trucks cannot fill the empty spaces of a lonely home. I keep replaying the moment I walked away, the air cold against my skin, the night sky heavy above me, and I felt both liberated and heartbroken, because endings are never clean. They are messy. They are painful. They leave scars that whisper long after the door closes. And now I turn to you, my friends, because this is not just my story, it is a question for anyone who has ever loved deeply. When trust is broken, When respect is shaken, do you fight to stay or do you choose to leave? I want you to think about it. Not just for me, but for yourself, because one day you might face a choice like this, standing at the edge of a future you dreamed of and realizing that love alone may not be enough. Would you risk your peace for someone else's pride? Or would you, like me, take a step back and protect the life you have worked so hard to build? So that is where my story rests for now, in a space between heartbreak and clarity, between holding on and letting go. And maybe, just maybe, the answer is not about choosing love or independence, but about remembering that the two should never be enemies. So this is where my story ends, at least for now. It is not just about a truck or about money, but about choices, about respect, and about the kind of life we want to build with someone else. And maybe you, listening right now, are wondering what you would say in a moment like this. Let me give you two simple phrases you can use in everyday conversations. The first is, I'm not comfortable with this. It is a clear and polite way to set your boundary. The second is, we need to talk about it. It is a simple but powerful invitation to open communication. Now let's practice together. Repeat after me slowly. I'm not comfortable with this. We need to talk about it. One more time. With more confidence. I'm not comfortable with this. We need to talk about it. These are not just English phrases. They are tools for life. Ways to protect your feelings while keeping respect for the other person. And if there is one thing I hope you take from this story, it is this. Love is precious, but self-respect is priceless. You deserve a relationship where your voice matters, where your choices are respected, and where compromise does not mean silence. So keep practicing your English, keep practicing your voice, and remember, the more you speak up, the stronger you become in language and in life.